The summer air of 1787 carried the smell of tobacco and river mud through the lowlands of Virginia. Carriages came and went along the narrow road that wound toward the newly built St. Augustine Seminary, a fortress of gray stone that rose like a monument to piety and secrecy. The families who sent their sons there were among the wealthiest in the colonies, people who measured virtue in silver and shame in silence. They called it a place of learning, of spiritual correction, of renewal. None of them ever asked why no one came back. Edmund Sterling, the man who founded the seminary, had the face of a saint and the instincts of a viper. His sermons could move men to tears, but behind his calm voice lived an intellect devoted not to God, but to control. The third son of a merchant family, Edmund had inherited neither land nor fortune, only a deep understanding of the things that frightened powerful men: exposure, humiliation, and loss. He learned early that faith could be the perfect disguise for manipulation. In the summer of 1786, he took the Sterling family's least profitable estate in Henrico County and began his holy work. The seminary was built with imported stone and heavy timber, its stained glass windows depicting saints whose faces seemed always to be watching. To the public, it was a refuge for misbehaving sons, a place where wayward youth might be reshaped into obedient men of God. But to those who understood Father Sterling's real purpose, St. Augustine was a sanctuary for secrets. Sons who had seen too much, who had stumbled upon forbidden accounts or heard their fathers' whispered deals, were quietly enrolled. They were told to pray for forgiveness. Their families were told to stop asking questions. The first of them arrived that spring, 12 young men with nervous faces and family crests stamped on their trunks. They came from Charleston, from Richmond, from Baltimore and Savannah, names that carried weight in colonial society. Sterling greeted each one personally, blessing them with words they could not yet recognize as a sentence. The gates closed behind them, and the letters that went home grew fewer and stranger. The boys wrote of peace, of devotion, of gratitude. Their handwriting became neat, deliberate, identical. The tone of each letter echoed the next, until they might as well have been written by the same hand. Father Sterling called this progress. In truth, it was the work of his corrections, wine laced with opiates, soft words whispered in the chapel's confessional, days filled with prayer and nights with sermons played like lullabies until the mind gave way. In the early months, they were allowed to study, to walk the gardens, to write home. Then came isolation. Then came obedience. Eventually, the students moved like a single organism, eyes lowered, mouths repeating scripture without thought. To visitors, it appeared a miracle of reformation. To Father Sterling, it was proof that the will could be broken as easily as the body. No one questioned the growing fees. The Sterling family name carried respectability, and the fathers who paid those invoices believed they were purchasing redemption. In truth, they were financing their own ruin. During private spiritual sessions, Sterling drew their sons' confessions like poison from a wound, recording every detail in his secret ledgers: business crimes, slave trading, tax evasion, affairs that could end entire legacies. His seminary was less a school than a vault of sin, and each payment another lock on the truth. Years passed, and the operation expanded. More students came, fewer letters went out. The families kept quiet because silence had become their only defense. When they visited, the chapel glowed with candlelight. The hymns were sweet, and the boys sat perfectly still in their pews, their faces calm and glassy. No one dared ask why their eyes never met their parents'. No one dared ask why the number of students always seemed smaller than before. In 1799, Thomas Jefferson Randolph, younger brother to one of the missing sons, arrived unannounced at St. Augustine. He was polite but persistent, a man trained to read the false smiles of merchants and the ledgers of liars. His brother Charles had been enrolled for 3 years, and the family's donations had tripled since then. The replies to their letters had become mechanical, almost unnatural. When Thomas finally saw his brother, the shock nearly broke him. Charles spoke softly, too softly, and smiled at everything. He no longer remembered their childhood, their home, or even their mother's name. His pupils were white as coins. His hands trembled when he tried to lift a cup. Thomas left that meeting with the certainty that his brother's soul had been taken apart piece by piece. In the months that followed, Thomas did what no one else had dared. He investigated. He traced money, shipments, and letters. He spoke with a widow, Martha Henley, whose late husband, a physician, had once been summoned to the seminary. In his notes, she showed Thomas the truth. Father Sterling had sought medical counsel on keeping a man's body alive while his will was destroyed. Dosages, mixtures, sedation schedules, all written in the doctor's hand. Her husband had died soon after of a heart attack. Martha had never believed it. Together, Thomas and Martha uncovered more than they'd hoped for. The seminary wasn't merely a prison or a house of extortion. It was a network, a system of control reaching through Virginia's highest circles. Sterling had been selling secrets to British agents, trading family scandals for coin and political leverage. The seminary was both a factory and a pipeline, its victims nothing more than raw material for influence. When Thomas and Martha entered the underground chambers, they found the truth preserved in glass. Rooms lined with files, sketches, names. Dozens of sedated young men, drugged beyond recognition, breathing shallowly under candlelight. Charts hung on the walls like trophies, describing the progress of each subject's obedience. And deeper still, in rooms of stone and lime, they found bodies, students who had not survived their spiritual purification. 23 graves, and more beyond counting. Then came the moment they met Father Sterling face to face. He stood before them in his clerical robes, calm, almost tender. "You seek monsters," he said, "but you should be looking at your fathers. I merely offered them what they desired: peace, order, silence." He gestured to the shelves of ledgers. "Expose me and you expose them. Every name, every bribe, every corpse in these walls bears the mark of a family that asked for my help." It was not rage that defeated him, but strategy. Thomas had already prepared for the cost. The following morning, as colonial militia surrounded the property, 17 families publicly confessed their crimes. They admitted to smuggling, to illegal trading, to fraud and murder, the very sins that had bound them to Sterling. Their reputations were destroyed, their fortunes gutted, but their sons, what was left of them, were saved. Sterling's power collapsed under the weight of truth. When the soldiers broke open the chapel, they found more bodies, a few survivors, and rooms that smelled of medicine and decay. Father Sterling was gone. Some said he fled across the sea, others that he died beneath the seminary itself, sealed in the tomb he had built. His ledgers vanished with him, though rumors claimed that fragments turned up decades later in private collections, names, dates, payments written in that same precise, unforgiving hand. The ruin of St. Augustine stood untouched for nearly half a century, a black scar of stone against the green hills. Locals avoided it, saying they could still hear prayers beneath the earth. That candlelight flickered in the chapel on nights when no moon rose. When builders finally came to tear it down in 1847, they uncovered yet another level beneath the basement, corridors and cells filled with bones too old and too many to count. Today, the ground where the seminary stood is empty, overgrown by pine and wild grass. But travelers still speak of strange music carried on the wind near Henrico County, low chanting in Latin, the echo of voices that forgot they were meant to be free. The Sterling name has all but disappeared from history, buried by families who learned too late that secrets can outlive their keepers. What remains is the lesson that St. Augustine left behind, that faith, in the wrong hands, becomes a weapon sharper than any blade. The fathers who sent their sons there wanted silence, and silence is exactly what they received. 247 voices swallowed by the earth, each whispering the same prayer: "Deliver us from those who claim to save us." And on certain nights, if the wind is right and the river mist drifts low through the pines, you might hear them still, the lost congregation of St. Augustine, answering in perfect unison to a sermon that never ends.